Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the incredibly powerful concepts found right at the very beginning of Atomic Habits by James Clear. But, we aren't starting in a boardroom or some pristine science lab. We're actually beginning our story on the final day of a young man's sophomore year of high school. It was a completely normal day that descended into absolute chaos in a fraction of a second. Just imagine, for a moment, standing on a baseball field, totally unaware that your entire life is about to change forever.
It was a truly horrific moment. As one of James Clear's classmates took a full swing, the bat just slipped right out of his hands. It flew through the air and struck James directly between the eyes. Now, he has no memory of the impact itself, but the physics of it were just brutal. The force of the bat smashed his nose into a distorted U-shape. The collision actually sent the soft tissue of his brain slamming into his skull, which caused immediate and massive swelling. Literally in less than a second, he sustained a broken nose, multiple skull fractures, and both of his eye sockets were completely shattered. And from there, his condition deteriorated at a terrifyingly rapid pace. It started with this slow, really confused walk to the nurse's office, where he couldn't even remember the current year or who the president was. He couldn't even recall his own mother's name for a full 10 seconds. By the time the ambulance finally arrived, his brain was swelling so fast that he completely lost consciousness. Then his body just started shutting down. He struggled to breathe, had his first seizure, and actually had to be airlifted to a much larger hospital in Cincinnati. By the time the helicopter landed, he was having repeated post-traumatic seizures. So, to save his life, a massive team of 20 doctors and nurses had to place him on a ventilator and put him into a medically induced coma.
Section 1. The Long Road Back. Navigating a Grueling Recovery. So, when he finally woke up from the coma, it felt like everything in his young life had just hit a giant pause button. The immediate medical crisis was technically over, but the physical and emotional mountains he was about to have to climb were really just coming into view.
He had to clear these incredibly exhausting and frankly humiliating physical hurdles just to function normally again. At one point, a nurse asked him to blow his nose to test his returning sense of smell. Well, the air was forced through the fractures in his eye socket, causing his left eye to literally bulge outward. It's just wild. He suffered from severe double vision for weeks. It took 8 full months before he was even cleared to drive a car again. And at physical therapy, he wasn't doing athletic drills. He was practicing the most basic motor patterns you could imagine, like simply trying to walk in a straight line.
And the emotional toll was just as heavy. His lifelong dream had always been to play professional baseball, following in the footsteps of his dad, who had actually played minor league baseball for the St. Louis Cardinals. But the crushing reality was that when he finally returned to the field a whole year later, he was the only junior cut from the varsity team. They sent him down to play with the sophomores. It was a hugely humiliating setback. Even when he did make varsity as a senior, he barely played. We're talking just 11 innings total. His high school athletic career was, for all intents and purposes, completely over.
Section 2. Discovering Small Habits. A new beginning at Denison University. Fast forward 2 years after his injury, and he's starting college. It was a blank slate, right? A total fresh start. He obviously wasn't going to be the star of the baseball team right out of the gate, so he made a very deliberate choice. He was going to take control of his life in the smallest, most mundane ways he possibly could.
We all know what a college dorm is usually like. Total late-night chaos, staying up late, playing video games. But while his peers were doing all of that, Clear focused strictly on minor routines, going to bed early, keeping his room incredibly tidy, lifting weights multiple times a week, improving his daily study habits. Now, these weren't massive, life-altering decisions. They were just tiny, fully controllable actions. But they gave him this crucial sense of control that he'd lost. They slowly rebuilt his confidence, and that growing belief in himself began to ripple outward into everything else.
And those small actions, they yielded some very real physical results, specifically 30 pounds of them. By just consistently lifting weights a few times a week, he went from a 170-pound featherweight to a solid, lean 200 pounds. It was a total physical transformation, but it was built entirely on the back of small, repetitive, highly consistent habits. Section 3. Compounding remarkable results. The snowball effect of consistent action. We so often think that massive success requires massive action, but what the source material clearly shows us is that changes that seem completely unimportant at first will actually compound into truly remarkable results, as long as you just stick with them.
His college achievements ended up being absolutely staggering. And remember, he didn't rely on some magical overnight success.
He literally started by making his bed and going to sleep on time. That eventually rippled into earning straight A's as a freshman. He was voted team captain by his junior year. 6 years after being placed in a medically induced coma, he was selected as the top male athlete at his university. He was even named to the ESPN Academic All-America team, an honor given to just 33 players nationwide. And he was awarded the university's highest academic honor. He didn't end up playing pro baseball, but he accomplished something way rarer. He actually fulfilled his potential.
And the foundational philosophy behind all of this success is incredibly simple. Tiny changes, remarkable results. Now, this wasn't just a strategy for his college recovery. Clear employed this exact same strategy a few years later when he started his own business and really began writing. He took this deeply personal lesson and made it the absolute cornerstone of his massive career.
Just look at how his newsletter audience exploded. Back in November 2012, he simply committed to publishing a new article on his website every Monday and Thursday. That's it, just 2 days a week. But look at this growth. By the end of 2013, he had 30,000 subscribers. By 2014, over 100,000, making it one of the fastest-growing newsletters on the entire internet at the time. And by 2015, he had 200,000 and signed a major book deal. This incredible growth is directly tied to that one simple repetitive habit of writing.
And the compounding sure didn't stop there. By the time he was putting the finishing touches on the book in 2018, his subscriber count had reached a staggering 500,000 people. That's enough people to fill several massive stadiums, all tuning in to read his work. It's an absolutely undeniable testament to the power of compounding effort over time.
Section 4. The 4-Step Framework, the operating manual for your potential. So we've seen exactly how this worked for the author, but what about us? How does it work for you? Well, here is the universal framework that anyone can use to change their own life.
Let's start with a really clear baseline. What even is a habit? A habit is simply a routine or behavior that is performed regularly, and in a lot of cases, completely automatically. It's the things you do without even really thinking about them. It's essentially the invisible architecture of your everyday life.
To understand how to actually build the good habits and break the bad ones, we have to understand the mechanics behind them. The backbone of this whole philosophy is a 4-step model: cue, craving, response, and reward. Now, this isn't totally new. It evolves from earlier psychological models. Back in the 1930s, B.F. Skinner proposed stimulus, response, reward. And more recently, you might have heard Charles Duhigg talk about cue, routine, reward. But here's the crucial point, and where Clear really hits the nail on the head. Previous models did an awesome job explaining how external stimuli influence us, but they really lacked a good explanation for our internal states. Clear's integrated model is totally unique because it accurately accounts for both the external environment, the stimuli around us, and our internal moods, cravings, feelings, and beliefs. Basically, our internal emotions matter just as much as our external environment when it comes to driving our behavior. So, what we are talking about here is definitely not just some dry academic theory. It's a highly actionable operating manual for your life, drawing on biology, neuroscience, philosophy, and psychology. It's a literal step-by-step system for improvement that works regardless of where you're starting from. Whether your goals are focused on getting healthier, making more money, boosting your productivity, or improving your relationships, honestly, as long as human behavior is involved, this framework applies perfectly.
We've covered a whole lot of ground today, right? From a totally devastating injury all the way to the mechanics of behavioral science. But I want to leave you with this really powerful assertion from the author. He says, the quality of our lives often depends on the quality of our habits. Because think about it, with the exact same habits, you're always going to end up with the exact same results. But with better habits, literally anything is possible. So I challenge you to take a hard look at your own daily routines right now. Are those small, seemingly unimportant things you do every single day actually compounding into the life you truly want to live?